Hello my little Sigmas, Doktor here, and in this video I'll be going through the process of making this anime style 3D model in Blender all the way from scratch. This isn't a tutorial but more of a time-lapse of me making this character while providing some additional commentary here and there. Whenever I make a 3D model in this style, I go straight into polymodeling instead of sculpting a base first to be topologized later. There are specific patterns that I follow in my base mesh when building these kinds of models, so that I can ensure that in the end result there won't be any nasty loops or triangles or animation unfriendly topology. I draw the 2D references that I use myself, adhering to a strict design philosophy that I've noted down so that all my models look consistent in their art style. Usually, I make a side view of the character to go alongside my reference, but I did not do that this time. I'm not sure why I didn't, but maybe I was feeling confident that I would be fine without one for this project. But I highly recommend beginners to not follow my approach. The model might look like it's on the thin side for now, but I will fix that bit by bit as I work on the mesh. You can see me jumping in and out of scope mode to edit my model. This is kind of a habit that I've developed as I use a drawing tablet and pen to do my 3D modeling. I prefer to use the grab brush to adjust the mesh instead of using proportional editing like most people do, because I feel like I have a lot more control that way, even though using proportional editing might be a lot more accurate in theory. Everyone has their preferences. So while I build onto my model, I keep readjusting the volumes and proportions. Nothing is final in this stage, and I try to be as critical as possible to make sure the mesh looks good in all directions. Sometimes references that you might use don't actually work in the 3-dimensional space, so keep an eye out for that. And if needed, feel free to deviate from it if your changes make the end result look a lot better. A bad habit beginners tend to develop is that they only make and edit the model while viewing it from the orthographic view, which is if you press 1 or 3 on the numpad. And sure, this certainly helps you getting proportions right and keeping everything straight and on the right axis, but it will give you a skewed view of how your model looks like when viewing it in perspective. So for everyone who has a tendency to do this or is just starting out, make sure to inspect your model with a very critical eye and perspective view. Here you can witness the classic struggle of making hands. Kinda looks bad now, they always need a few tweaks to look right. I like to go back and forth on them, let them rest for a while so I can come back later to readjust them. So it's time to make the face. I like to start off with the eyes. You can see me trying really hard to get the shape right. Throughout the video, you will be able to see me struggle a lot with just getting the right shape for them. What I'm doing here for the mouth might seem a little unconventional, but let me explain. In a lot of tutorials or videos about topology, it is mentioned that you need plenty of vertices and lips for proper mouth deformation. But when you're going for a stylized, unshaded and a lower poly style like I'm doing here, the opposite is true. By not having any extra loops around the mouth, it is so much easier to get the mouth in the shape that you want. And by using blend shapes, you can easily create different mouth movements without having to create elaborate rig for it. I had a tough time to get the shape of the ad right because I did not have a side view reference of this character to base off of it. It all worked out in the end, but I do think it would have saved me a bit of time if I simply drew the head of this character from the side. You can see me try to draw the rest of the head with the annotations tool. The way I'm making her cheeks might look too puffy right now, but it serves to get that classic 3/4 anime style view of the face where the cheeks stick out quite a bit to give the form to the face. When learning how to model in this kind of style, I studied the topology and texturing of similar 3D models by importing them into Blender. A really big source of inspiration for me were the 3D models used in later Disgaea games, so if you see any similarities, it is definitely not a coincidence. quickly assigning a skin tone here so that I have a better feeling of how her body actually looks like. By extruding the upper part of her eyes down, I make eyelashes that are not separate off of her face. I give them dimension by adding a lip in the middle and extending them outwards. Instead of making her eyes actual proper eyeballs by using spheres, I create a quote-unquote fake eye by extruding her eye socket inwards to be inside her head, giving it a white color and adding a floating ellipse to function as the iris. Using this method, you can create a 2D feeling of eyes in a 3D model. I like to make the pupils separate from the iris. That way it creates a lot more dimension and it helps by saving texture space. Same story goes for the highlights. By adding eyes to your character, you can make it feel a lot more alive and not feel like an alien. Sometimes if you feel like your model's looking bad while you're just starting on it, try to give your character a pair of eyes. It will get rid of the uncanny feeling. So now it's time to give it a fresh cut. Adding hair to your character really transforms your model from looking mediocre to actually looking decent. Who knew that being bald isn't the best look you can go for? Here I'm making a base strawberry that will be repeated across a design. If you have an object that gets repeated throughout your character's design, make a base version of it first so you can simply duplicate it afterwards. It saves so much time. Usually when I make a character, especially a young, cute looking character like this, I use a pre-made base mesh from another project that I have finished prior, and all I do is readjust the topology and proportions. Save so much time, and almost around 2 hours or maybe even 3, but I thought it would be pretty lame if I would do that for this video. I wanted to show the entire process, or at least as much as possible, because, spoiler alert, I did lose some video footage during the texturing and the first part of the rigging process. So when the video gets to that part, I'll try to explain to the best of my ability what and also how I did everything. A cat girl with strawberries in her ear is kind of a ridiculous design, isn't it? But I thought it was kind of cute. You can guess what her favorite fruit is. I can tell you that. It's bananas. You can see that her pigtails don't match up with the reference, but that's fine. I actually prefer this look now over the initial idea. The colors in the design of the hair might look a little samey now, but that will be fixed once I move on to texturing, where I can assign asymmetrical seams and UVs to her hair. I really like how that goes, so I thought it would be interesting and cute to create a character based off of one. Just adding a few tweaks to her body and connecting any loose parts that should be attached to each other before moving on to actually giving her some clothes. Now she doesn't have to be naked anymore. I saved the file and make a new one just in case I have to revert to her original mesh. Instead of modeling clothes on top of her body, I actually readjust the mesh to literally be her clothing. So far I'm not planning to give any outfits, but if I do change my mind later on, I can always just go back to an older save and work from there. By turning her arms into a blouse, for example, I save a big time headache from trying to rig hair, because having a mesh underneath the clothing of your character will give you a harder time weight painting it properly. Here you can see me make triangle at the end of her skirt. This is a very neat trick to make round objects look a lot less blocky when you're going for a lower poly style. So for anyone who's afraid of trying a mesh, don't be. Use them to your advantage to get more precise shapes. Only sticking to quartz removal is overrated anyway. This is my super secret patented technique to make frills. Well, now it's not secret anymore, but feel free to copy it. At first I wanted Hotel to curve naturally, but that would give me a hard time trying to rig it to have it take on other positions. If your character's a tail, make sure it's completely straight when in a T-pose. It might look a little comedic, but that way you can properly weight paint and animate it. Unless it's supposed to be static, of course, then, do whatever you like. Blocking in our shading here, I'm not texturing out just yet, just trying to get an overall feel and look of where and how the colors should look like. You are limited by your topology if you use this method, so you can't get any details in just yet. And now it's time to get some seams in for UVs. You might notice that I'm putting in a lot of seams, which might seem odd because the general consensus is that you should place your seams in places where you can't properly see them and also should use them sparingly. You can see later that the technique I'm using to texture my character here doesn't really call for that approach, as I won't assign an entire block of color to a lot of UV islands that don't need any details. Only parts where I can't properly shade because topology restrictions or places that need patterns or details are properly unwrapped and placed nicely on the UV map. I write down the groups of colors that will be used in a design on the sides of the texture space. That way I can easily group all the islands that use that specific color so that I can scale them down in size to save texture space. This method of texturing is destructive, so you need to be certain of the colors that you're going to use in the final product. Here I'm tidying up all the islands that do need to be textured properly. I find this part really meditative. It's like a little puzzle, trying to get all the pieces right and use as much texture space as possible while still keeping everything nice and clean. I don't know, it's really relaxing for me. Yeah, you can see me being pretty sneaky and stealing the teeth of a pre-made character. I forgot to model out tongue and teeth and I really didn't feel like doing that myself. So what I'm doing here might look a little weird. I'm creating a new shape key which allows me to deform the mesh non-destructively because I can always return to its original state. I use this method to make facial expressions, whether it be like different mouth movements or blinking expressions for the eyes. By opening her mouth here, I can just easily adding her tongue and teeth. By the way, you should name all your different objects, unless, of course, you want to create hell for yourself when you're rigging your character. I should try to use a logical naming convention so that objects that are related to each other are grouped together in the collection menu. So instead of naming an iris, quote unquote iris, I instead named them quote unquote I_iris. Same goes for like the highlights and the eyebrows, etc. So if you were confused about me explaining my texturing method earlier, and now you can see it in action. It's a lot more simple than it sounded like, and it saves so much time as well. Now that all the bigger parts of the mesh have been assigned a color, let's move on to drawing in the details.
And it's gone!
The footage is gone. I don't know what happened. I recorded it, but it just didn't show up anywhere. Yeah. Pairs have been shared, but that's all in the past now, so instead, I'll just go over what I did and how. So what I did with the big UV islands is that I colored them all in with a base color and then added a shade color afterwards where needed. For example, under her chest or her leggings, on her face, etc. And then I moved on to drawing the details like the strawberries on her leggings and apron or polka dots on her skirt. I didn't do anything special, but it just took a very long time to do this. I then moved on to building a skeleton. This is a very rudimentary rig with no fancy animation controls or whatever. I did rotate all the bones to have the local x-axis rotate along with the direction I want the bone to rotate on by default, so that I can quickly pose the model by mostly rotating the bones on the x-axis. This helps with properly moving the fingers, for example. Otherwise they would all move in deviating directions for each other and you would get like noodle fingers and stuff. So, now it's weight painting time. Everyone's favorite. I did select the entire model and let the armature deform with animatic weights. I found that this would look shit, and I had to do 90% of the work myself anyway. I found out that while weight painting the arms here, the default stance to take is a little low, so I have to spread them out a bit more in edit mode so that the shoulder deforms a bit better as the arms get lifted up. I like to properly weight paint the main body first before moving on to the separate meshes like the skirt and ribbons. There isn't much commentary to give here. I feel like the footage kind of speaks for itself. If you want to learn more about weight painting, you probably should just watch a video or a tutorial that's focused about it. I see a lot of people rig skirts and dresses using a mesh deform modifier. The problem with that is that your rig won't work outside of Blender as it relies on a modifier, so I just opt for some bones to move the skirt around. And that's kind of it. Making this model took around 10 hours, and don't get me started on how long it took to make this video. I got really positive responses from my previous videos, which drove me to take a step outside my comfort zone and provide a voiceover for this one. So, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, hit the bell button, and PayPal me $10.
I actually make animations and art for the Brony community.
And that's why you always underscored your fucking computer whenever I walk in? That's why you always turned off your monitor?
That's another thing. I kind of watch porn relating to ponies.